Welcome to the show. This has been a very disturbing week last week for people in Uvalde, Texas, and for people who are still witnessing the very latest on the Hobbs Elementary School shooting. Tonight, new details into this. New details into this shooting with new and upfront details and very latest ever since last week. With information about why the police chief, and also what Biden and Cohen are saying about gun control. We'll tell you about the gun control a little bit later in the show. We start with video and audio release from that school shooting. So what does it tell us? Watch.
The body in there, there was a life that was lost in there that meant something to a mother, to a grandmother, to an uncle, to an aunt, and it's heartbreaking.
This as we learn more about the timeline of this massacre. Video obtained by ABC News shows police rescuing children after breaking a window, then pulling them out.
Somebody jump out the window.
Oh, the kids! They're getting the kids out.
The footage also captures audio of a dispatcher relaying information to officers from a 911 operator of what they were hearing from children inside the classroom that a gunman had entered.
We have a child on row 12. Are we able to... Is there anybody inside of the building? Is advising he is in the room full of victims at this moment.
An ABC News analysis of the video shows that was at approximately 12:13, about 40 minutes after the gunman entered the school.
8 to 9 children.
Again at 12:16, she's called back and said there's 8 to 9 students alive.
The shooter was inside the school for 77 minutes. Texas authorities say the school district police chief wrongly believed the situation was no longer an active shooter and had ordered tactical teams not to enter the classroom while the children desperately called 911 for help. The rampage finally stopping when sources say federal agents decided to go in and fatally shoot the gunman. Now the Justice Department is reviewing law enforcement's response.
What we can't forget and must never forget in all this are the victims. 19 children and 2 teachers who lost their lives to violence. Coming in our next half hour, we remember each and every one of them sharing their stories.
Now, what about that door? Well, what we heard so far is that the door had been propped open. Why would that teacher prop open the door? Hadn't she locked the door or ran away before the door closed? Maybe that would have saved the kids and that person would still be in jail. So let's take a look at what KTL5 has to say.
Their new reaction tonight and new information about how the shooter got into the school. Authorities had said a teacher had propped the door open where the gunman entered, now saying the teacher closed that door when she saw the shooter, but for some reason it didn't lock, raising new questions as a community begins to bury the victims.
1 week since the mass shooting, the first funerals to mourn the victims. 10-year-old Amerie Jo Garza remembered by a crowd peppered with purple, the little girl's favorite color. So many turning out, the church had to turn some people away after reaching capacity. Memorial services of some kind planned today for 5 of 21 people killed by a gunman at Robb Elementary School.
This is our hometown. We were both born and raised here, you know. We needed to come and pay our respects.
Photos capturing children coming to pay respects to other children as scrutiny continues over the police response to the Uvalde massacre.
As more comes out, that's where anger comes in.
Law enforcement didn't take down the shooter for more than an hour. CNN newly obtaining cell phone video from the scene purporting to capture a child's distressing call heard on Customs and Border Protection radio.
Are you in there? We have died.
And we're hearing today from a first responder, an off-duty Border Patrol agent who during the shooting rushed into the school where his wife teaches and daughter attends, defending law enforcement's actions to NBC.
To me, I believe everyone there was doing the best that they could given the circumstances. Yeah, I believe everyone there was doing everything in their power.
Tonight, people questioning if Robb Elementary should be demolished. One lifelong resident reacting.
I don't think it should be completely demolished. I could see where they could do away with the building that everything occurred. I could see where they need to upgrade the security measures.
And tonight we are learning the call made by the school district to parents that day about an active shooter was sent at 12:20 p.m. What's noteworthy is officials last week said at that time law enforcement had gathered in the school but were told to hang back, not to confront the gunman, treating it at that point as a barricaded suspect situation. We'll have a lot more on that at 10 o'clock. For now, I'll send it back to you. Lauren?
Send it way back. That's just outrageous. When we return, the police chief of the Uvalde School District speaking out in an interview with CNN will tell you. Then also CNN confronts the Uvalde incident commander. And the question is raised, could the daily Uvalde shooting have been prevented? And what the mayor discusses about that shooting when we continue. Now we'll look more into what what the police chief for the Uvalde School District says, because he is now speaking out to CNN about this incident. What does he have to say?
A 2-man and a truck.
Let's play this 8-minute interview.
Right now, Texas officials say Uvalde School District Police Chief Pedro Arredondo is not responding to requests for another interview in their investigation into the school shooting. He was, of course, the incident commander who made the call to hold off breaching the classroom where all 21 victims were killed.
It's a few minutes ago, CNN's Aaron Cooper said that he reached Arredondo, who said he had been in touch with the Texas Department of Public Safety. Shimon Prokupez, also in Uvalde. Shimon, I understand you got in contact with him as well. What did he say? Any news?
Well, Jim, just to give everyone the play-by-play here, just happened moments ago. You had Aaron Cooper, our producer out here, who was at his home, saw him leaving his home. So we went to the office where we assumed he was going, and sure enough, we were sitting in our car when he drove in. So we quickly ran out and confronted him essentially as he was going in through the back door of the school district office, and we asked him about the accusations from the director of the DPS, who says that he was the sole person who made the decision to not have officers breach that door. We also asked him questions about whether or not he's cooperating with the investigation. Take a listen to what he said. I want to talk to you about your decision and what the DPS director said.
How's it going? Good, I'm Pete. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
I want to talk to you about the decision and what
Department we're good, but just to let y'all know, and I just spoke with him.
I know you did.
Oh, you're not bluffing me, are you?
No.
No, just so you all know. Just so you all know, obviously, we're not going to release anything. We have people in our community being buried, so we're going to be respectful.
I just want your reaction
we're going to be
the director McGraw saying that you were responsible for the decision to go into that room. How do you explain yourself?
We're going to be respectful to the family.
I understand that, but you have an opportunity
to explain
yourself to the parents.
And just so you know, we're gonna do that eventually, obviously. When? And whenever this is done, and the families quit grieving, then we'll do that, obviously. And just so everybody knows, we've been in contact with DPS every day. Just so you all know.
They said that you're not cooperating.
I've been on the phone with them every day.
But they say you're not cooperating. So take 2 seconds.
Just so you know, we've been talking to them every day.
What is your reaction?
Y'all have a good day.
What is your reaction, sir? And Jim and Poppy, obviously, we gave him ample opportunity several times, asking him to address the accusations from the DPS about his involvement, about his decision making. He chose to dodge those questions, and as you can see, going inside his office, people came out to get him inside. We were the only ones there. We've been looking for him for days. For days we've been looking for him. We've been reaching out to him, wanting him to respond to this community. People here very upset, obviously, over some of the decision making. And finally, my producer, Matt Friedman, and I, look, we went there, we wanted to ask him questions. He clearly is dodging some of the key questions in this, claiming that he's cooperating in this investigation. He claims he's going to address some of these questions at some point. We'll see. Look, there's still a lot of questions that he needs to answer, as well as law enforcement in general here.
Absolutely, and he said when the family stop grieving, they're never going to stop grieving, and they deserve answers. Shimon, thank you to you, Matt, whole team on the ground for that.
Clearly, accountability is key here. So, and that could come in form of civil cases, lawsuits, etc., which are likely. But let's talk about criminal first. The Parkland School Resource Officer was charged with child neglect under Florida law, as well as lying to investigators. That case is still pending. What is the legal standard that would be applied to hold, for instance, a chief to a similar legal liability, perhaps criminal liability, for not going in sooner?
Jim, it's really hard to imagine a scenario in which any of the law enforcement officers who were in charge at the scene, so of course Chief Arredondo and any others who we maybe haven't heard about yet, who were in positions of decision making, it's hard to imagine a scenario in which they'd be held criminally responsible. A criminal responsibility always involves some level of intent, so they would have to be proven to have been like deliberately reckless in their decision making, or it's a pretty high bar to meet. So that's hard to imagine. Civil liability is, I would assume, I'm not a civil lawyer, but I would assume is in the future for each one of these institutions and the leadership, the folks that functioned in them, because the job did not get done here. So there's all kinds of flaws that you could point to in a claim for civil liability: failure to train, failure to execute responsibly, failure to make clear decisions here. There's all kinds of areas for simple negligence.
Andy, when it comes to the chain of command and how it is that Arredondo was the incident commander here and in charge for all of those perilous minutes of inaction, it turns out there were other top officials on the scene, heads of other divisions, other law enforcement agencies. Could it have been also that those other commanders agreed with his decision not to go in, not to breach the door? And how does sort of the hierarchy work here when making a decision in the middle of a crisis about who leads?
Sure. So that system that we're talking about is the incident command system. It's well established. Every department trains on the same basic premises as put out by the Department of Homeland Security. So the incident command system would, as a default rule, whoever is in charge of that jurisdiction, in this case, it's the school property, and that's how the school police officer, the chief, Arredondo, is in charge of incident command from the beginning. But that command can very easily be shifted to a larger, more capable, more sophisticated, more experienced law enforcement unit. Like in this situation, the first question I have is why Uvalde police didn't take command of that scene. They were the law enforcement entity on scene with a SWAT team that had trained on active shooter response. So we have a lot to learn about this. All the other commanders who were there working around and with Chief Arredondo should be questioned vigorously.
Exactly.
And we don't know if they tried to shift the incident command to Uvalde and Arredondo resisted it, or if they all agreed miraculously that Arredondo should retain it. He, as the commander of, I think, 5 other police officers, that's a really questionable decision. But these are all facts that the independent investigation conducted by the Justice Department will hopefully get to the bottom of with some really penetrating interviews.
Well, there are some indications that there wasn't total agreement. A Texas legislator said on CNN this Sunday that the Customs Border Patrol team wanted to go in earlier. We'll see how that comes out in the investigation. But on legal liability, Andrew, there's another precedent here, and that is the George Floyd officers, because they were actually convicted for failure to render aid in the case of George Floyd. Could the Uvalde officers, could that be a path in terms of criminal liability, failure to render aid? That's a federal charge, as I understand it.
It is possible, but it seems a little bit more remote under these circumstances, and I know that people are probably scratching their heads at that one. But here's why: the officers in the response to the George Floyd arrest stood there and watched Derek Chauvin essentially embark on an intentional act that resulted in the death of George Floyd. They were witnesses to Mr. Floyd's suffering and stood there and did nothing. In this case, it seems likely that the officers in the hallway will be able to point to a leadership decision instructing them not to go forward, not to enter the room. And so they may be shielded in a sense from that sort of criminal liability because they were simply following orders, albeit horrendously poor orders, but it does make the situation a little bit different.
Goodness, tough to explain to parents for sure. Andrew McCabe, thanks so much.
So the parents are still looking for answers, and so is this show. When we return, what the mayor of Uvalde has to say about this shooting. And more, and a school threat from Inside, and some more school threats this time from Inside Edition. Stay tuned. Let's bring you up to date now on Michigan. As you know, there is another school shooting in Michigan. From BridgeMichigan.com, the article says, after another school shooting, Michigan students, teachers worry about safety. I want to have you listen to the article.
After another school shooting, Michigan students, teachers worry.
There's not going to be enough time. Junior Leah Foster spends her days at Westwood High School keeping a suspicious eye on students with backpacks in the hallways. Junior Lee Chanhol and his friends at East Lansing High have escape routes to each room of the school. And Dee Compton, an 8th grade teacher in Grand Rapids, is running out things to say to students after the unknown year school shooting. The massacre at Texas Elementary School May 24th was a very reminder of Michigan students and teachers who spoke with Bridge Michigan that their personal safety is in jeopardy. But going down, in 2020, the Centers for Disease Control reported that there was over 45,000 deaths from the U.S. in firearms. In the 6 months since the shooting, there has been no major legislation passed in Michigan to address concerns of school safety. A task force has been formed to investigate the situation, but now schools are going through the same protocols with newfound high sense of responsibility. Teachers who spoke with Bridge Michigan agree that change needs to occur to make schools a place where people feel safe again. They're hopeful that change will happen, but currently stuck asking when and if it will happen before an incident happens at their school. And last week, the parents are charged with involuntary manslaughter. Ethan Crumley is charged with murder, but the parents of the Oxford shooting suspect want his journal excluded from that trial. That journal could hold evidence of what happened, but the parents wanted to exclude it for a reason. Gummer continues when we return with the mayor's reaction of that school shooting. Welcome back. What does the mayor have to say and discuss about mass shootings like this? Listen.
The Texas Department of Public Safety and Texas Rangers are in charge of the investigation. I'm not law enforcement, so I'm not privy to that. But look, I was at the briefing that Governor Abbott got. The next day I saw a press conference from DPS, and the next day I saw a press conference from Colonel McGraw. Well, every press conference something has changed in different things. I'm not doubting DPS or Texas Rangers. I think they will do a thorough and efficient job, but I would like to have an outside set of eyes to look over the whole thing and review it, because If there's holes in it or we made a mistake, I want to be as transparent as we can. I want to make sure that we can let everybody know what happened in our community, and so that other towns can better prepare for this.
That's just an extra of what he said. I'm not going to play you the rest because there is still a debate going on. Just days after that, there's a debate over arming teachers in the classroom. In the classroom. So let's listen to this debate. Then we're going to play we're going to replay John Stossel's
The country are looking again at arming classroom teachers. So right here in Georgia, it is already legal. So
in Georgia, it's legal. So let's take a look.
Ask a veteran kindergarten teacher here in Metro Atlanta. Do you know any teachers anywhere in Georgia who arm themselves in the classroom? Not one, she'll tell you.
We are educators. We are not law enforcement.
This kindergarten teacher, Lisa Morgan, is also president of the Georgia Association of Educators. And she said,
we're not going to play that for you, but we'll play it for you. We're going to play it for you shortly, but I want to revisit John Stossel's
shooting in South Florida.
17 people shot to death. What can be done about school shootings? Some say kids will be safer.
But the whole reason I wanted to recover this was because right before this, former President Donald Trump was mocked, saying, "You come into our schools, you're going to be dead." That's what he said.
If some teachers carry guns, President Trump said that.
We need to let people know, you come into our schools, you're going to be dead.
Trump was mocked for suggesting teachers have guns.
Arming a teacher is completely insane.
It's a terrible idea.
It's a terrible idea. But Trump's critics probably don't even know that many teachers have brought guns to school for years. In Texas, teachers carry in about 200 schools. This high school advertises that.
I can see that sign out on the highway. Boy, it's a great, man.
Parents we interviewed here like the policy.
It's a good idea.
I think we need it.
It makes me feel safer.
I love the King gun policy.
Superintendent Ricky Stevens created it, saying if there's trouble, teachers want to go defend the kids.
We know our staff and our teachers are going to go. Do we want them to go with a pencil or go with a pistol?
Everybody's against it.
This Florida student says teachers carrying guns is a terrible idea.
You're asking a teacher to fight an assault rifle with a handgun. That seems like a pretty unfair fight to me.
The teachers have handguns against somebody with a big gun. That's not much.
It's not much, but it's better than nothing. If you go there with nothing, you have no chance of stopping anything.
The police come. They see your teacher with a gun. How do you keep them from shooting her?
We train a lot with our local law enforcement. So that helps us because we want them to at least know we're there and at least recognize us. If they happen to get shot while they're stopping a tragedy, all of our guardians have said, that's just the price of being a guardian.
His teacher saw how during the Florida school shooting, the security guard waited outside.
It made me mad.
It's a reason she's glad she could carry her gun at school.
You have to have a fighting chance if something should happen at our school.
We hid her identity because she and the school don't want a potential attacker to know which teachers are armed.
Are you carrying now? Of course.
Many people say armed teachers create new dangers.
Teacher accidentally fired a gun in his classroom.
At this California school, a teacher mistakenly shot at the ceiling. One student was slightly hurt by falling debris. But that's the only incident we could find where a student was injured.
Took a rifle to his...
On the other hand, armed teachers have stopped school shootings.
16-year-old Luke Woodham has been arrested.
When this student killed two classmates, an assistant principal with a gun held the killer at gunpoint until police arrived. We don't know how often armed teachers deter shootings. The media can't cover crimes that never happened. The media also distort what President Trump proposed.
Donald Trump said teachers should have guns. Teachers should not be required to protect and serve and to teach.
Required? No teacher's required to carry. It's voluntary. Those who want to bring their guns to school can. Here's another distortion.
I really do not support the idea of arming teachers.
Arming teachers. Arming teachers. A new federal program? That's not what the president proposed. Lots of teachers already have guns. All a school has to do is allow some to bring their guns to school. At the Keene School District, however, Superintendent Stevens did create a new government program.
The school purchases a gun, and then we give them and register them to our teacher.
That way, he says, he can make sure all teachers have training on the same type of gun. Finally, as we ponder the best way to keep students safe, we should address the scariest myth.
The epidemic of shootings.
The epidemic of school shootings.
Despite what the media say, there is no epidemic of school shootings. No sharp increase. School shootings kill far fewer kids than driving, suicide, drowning, even suffocating. Why now? School shootings are not in a big uptick.
Exactly right. But we prepare for them because if even one shooting happens, it's more than we would want.
You're 10 times as likely to die suffocating.
Right.
I mean, you can't protect against all these things.
No, but we do train our kids in school how to not suffocate, how not to drown.
Certainly, Stevens' armed teacher program is cheaper than what my town does. New York City spends hundreds of millions of dollars stationing police officers in and around schools. Of course, here and in most blue states, suggesting that some teachers carry weapons horrifies people.
They don't understand that a responsible, trained teacher with a firearm is better than having a teacher with nothing. Texas will definitely probably be leading the way when it comes to protecting our kids with weapons, and that New York would choose to go a radically different way.
I'm glad that we live in a country where the local people can decide what goes on in their school district and not a bunch of people in New York City.
It's good that America has 50 states. That allows experiments. Teachers in New York City may fear guns, but teachers in Texas can serve and protect.
Now to that debate that I promised you.
All across the country are looking again at arming classroom teachers. So right here in Georgia, it is already legal. So where are the armed teachers in our state of Georgia? Are there any at all? 11 Alive John Sherrick is digging into that for us tonight.
Ask a veteran kindergarten teacher here in Metro Atlanta. Do you know any teachers anywhere in Georgia who arm themselves in the classroom? Not one, she'll tell you.
We are educators. We are not law enforcement.
This kindergarten teacher, Lisa Morgan, is also president of the Georgia Association of Educators. And she says that even though a state law was passed back in 2014, empowering local school boards in Georgia to arm their teachers, only about 4 school districts did so, at least for a time, after Parkland in 2018, including Fannin County Schools. Parent Elliot Southworth told us then he wanted his child's teacher to carry a gun in class.
I think Fannin will be much less likely to have an incident now. When you create a gun-free zone, you've taken away all the security.
We're working to reach Fannin County Schools about the impact of the policy and if it is still in place, but almost all Georgia school boards still are declining to arm their teachers, which is what Lisa Morgan and the GAE hope does not change.
We believe the only individuals in a school building who are armed should be properly trained law enforcement.
Former Congresswoman Gabby Gifford's gun control organization lists Georgia among 28 states that allow classroom teachers to be armed. And the group says there have been dozens of serious gun accidents in schools across the country in the past 5 years, partly as a result of teachers mishandling the guns. But backers of Georgia's law insist that the more armed teachers there are in a school, the quicker the response to armed intruders. As it is, most Georgia school boards are saying no thanks.
Our schools are a reflection of the communities around them, and we must solve the problem of gun violence in our communities. That's how it enters our schools.
And the problem can be solved. So, besides Keene, Texas law allows arming teachers. So the question is, why do a few school districts have it? Well, one big idea being talked about in Houston in the wake of the mass shooting of Uvalde is allowing teachers to arm themselves in the classroom. It's already an option here in our state, an option few districts already have taken advantage of. Teachers armed with their voices protested outside the U.S. Senator Ted Cruz's office in Austin Tuesday. But But Alabama authorized the bill and created that school marshal program in 2013. But this isn't about what the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, Zef Capo said. But it's already a law here in Texas. Now, rural Texas schools are considering Army doing the same thing. The comments come after 19 children. An increase in security. Could that be enough? Army teachers might be good. I mean, like Stossel said, there is no epidemic in these school shootings. I think the main reason why these shootings happen is because, one, they want to confront the bully. Number two, they hate their teachers. And basically, three, that's just two reasons. Third is just basically they want attention. And like Dr. Phil said, we don't have the ability to screen who will not shoot people in a mass shooting. Serial fascists, whatever. The truth of the matter is 66% tell at least two or more people. 80% of them tell at least one person. The case of Susan Schofield, her children are being compared to, we're linking them to school shootings. Ridiculous. This Army teachers debate still going on, so we're out of time for now. But for Friday at Parker Pool, it's depending on the sunlight or whatever. I was going to do it on Monday, Memorial Day, but I got sidetracked with my sleep. So Friday, it could depend. In parentheses, it could depend. It could depend on Army teachers. I'm going to ask the people at Parker Pool what they think about Army teachers. Should it be happening? I could ask the super, and when August comes, I might ask Celeste Garcia how she feels about her other teachers. I may even ask the people of Flower Bluff. It could happen. So Friday at Parker Pool, should Army teachers be a great idea? That's on Friday. That's all for this edition of Give Me a Break Wednesday going to Thursday. We'll see you again for Give Me a Break Friday at Parker Pool. If I don't do it at Parker Pool, we'll see you back in the studio. For all of us here at Give Me a Break and YouTube, good night.